immediate reaction was heart sank. How much is it going to cost to get it out? The Brooks Range, 9,000 feet high. How are you going to pump oil 900 miles through the permafrost and over the mountain ranges?
Jo 80-luvun alkupuolella neljännes Yhdysvaltain kotimaisesta öljystä, 3 miljoonaa barrelia päivässä, pumpattiin Alaskan putkien kautta. Öljymaailman valta-asetelmat muuttuivat taas.
It didn't take very long for supply and demand to catch up with the OPEC countries. They thought that they could raise the prices as high as they wanted and consumers would pay the price. But with conservation and alternative energy sources and non-OPEC oil, that didn't prove the case.
Vuonna 1983, vain 4 vuotta toisen öljykriisin jälkeen, OPECin oli pakko alentaa hintoja. Alaskasta, Pohjanmereltä ja muualta saatava öljy söi OPEC-maiden markkinaosuuksia.
That forced them to institute quotas where they would keep their production, they said, at 17.5 million barrels a day. Just 4 years earlier, they had been producing 31 million barrels a day.
Öljyn hinta määräytyi nyt New Yorkin raaka-ainepörssissä. Se tiesi OPECille ikävyyksiä.
What the quotas and the price cuts really were pointing to was that control over pricing itself, which OPEC had taken in 1973, was slipping out of OPEC's hands into the so-called opener commodity market. What this really meant is that oil, which had been a great strategic commodity, was also becoming just another commodity like gold and coffee and cocoa and pork bellies.
You know, in 79, when the price of oil started to go up so highly, so many OPEC members became so intoxicated. It's a real pleasure. It's like a lady getting pregnant. That was a moment of pleasure. But thereafter, that little pregnancy brought with it pain, and the pain increased gradually until we had the painful delivery in 1986. And the price of oil collapsed.
Vuoden 1986 alkupuolella raakaöljyn hinta romahti $29 barrelilta $10. Markkinavoimat määräsivät hinnan. OPEC ei enää ollut ohjaajan paikalla.
In 1986, oil prices collapsed. The OPEC countries found that their market share was getting smaller and smaller. Saudi Arabia was actually at one point producing less oil than the British sector of the North Sea. For the oil industry, the sudden dramatic fall in their revenues came as a great shock, and it meant that the companies went through a major and immediate crisis of contraction, of cutting budgets and cutting employment and becoming smaller companies. For the public, the price collapse was terrific. It meant that they were seeing prices that they had never expected to see again.
And we got the price of gas down to 0.
The battle cry was sounded just after 6 this morning. Within minutes, the battlefields were packed. This North Austin service station and another on the south side went all out to win a radio station contest aimed at slashing gasoline prices. Both owners agreed to give their gas away from 6 a.m. till the stuff ran out. By mid-morning, double lines stretched more than a mile at each station. Rules of the day permitted up to 15 free gallons per car.
Maailmassa oli öljyä tarjolla niin paljon, ettei hintataso paljon heilahtanut, vaikka Irakin ja Iranin verinen sota koetteli muitakin Persianlahden maita.
Since the start of the war, Iraq thought of bringing pressure against Iran by hitting their oil terminals. Iran thought of retaliating by hitting Iraqi tankers going out of the Gulf, and later tankers of other countries that were helpful to Iraq, like Kuwait or Saudi Arabia. And that's why we went to the United States, to the UK, and to the Soviet Union to reflag under their national flag and get the protection of their navies.
What I think that it was an indication of the final takeover by the United States of responsibilities east of Suez. Kuwait had previously been a British responsibility.
Irakin ja Iranin sota verotti kummankin voimia. Teheranissa tehtiin kaatuneiden kunniaksi suihkulähde. 8 vuoden katkerien taistelujen jälkeen sotaväsymys sai maat suostumaan aselepoon. Se oli ajatolla Khomeinin mielestä kuin myrkkymalja. Saddam Hussein julisti Bagdadissa saaneensa suuren voiton.
Despite his boast, this was not a victory. The Iran-Iraq war was not a victory for Saddam Hussein. He survived. That's the most that he can say. But it was tremendously costly. He went deep into debt. He sacrificed a lot of people to a mad ambition. The estimates of the debt that Iraq amassed during the war with Iran are in the neighborhood of $75 to $80 billion. He had mortgaged the future by conducting this war and by insisting on conducting it in the way he did.
The great gambler had to make good on the mess that he had created. Oil prices had to rise at a phenomenal rate. Other producers had to get out of his way. The Kuwaitis and the United Arab Emirates had to lower their production. The entire market forces had been disrupted, and this man had no time. I mean, he couldn't wait for a turnaround in the economic picture.
And he tried to coerce his Arab brothers into forgiving the debts. Kuwait refused. This was one of their cardinal sins in Saddam Hussein's eyes.
Elokuun toisena päivänä 1990 Irakin joukot hyökkäsivät varhain aamulla Kuwaitiin. Lännessä pelättiin eniten sitä, että Irak jatkaisi hyökkäystä Saudi-Arabiaan. Silloin Saddam Hussein saisi haltuunsa melkein puolet maailman öljyvaroista. Kuwait kukistui.
This was one of history's great stick-ups. This was Saddam Hussein, desperate for cash, looking around at a small, very rich neighbor.
Why do you hold up the bank? Well, that's where the money is. And that was Saddam. Kuwait was the most convenient target. It was nearby. He could squeeze it. He could blackmail it. He could frighten it into submission. And when all failed, he could walk in as he walked in on August 2nd.
5 months ago, Saddam Hussein started this cruel war against Kuwait. Tonight, the battle has been joined.
Mahtavien ilmaiskujen jälkeen liittouman joukot etenivät Kuwaitiin.
If I assume that Kuwait was a small country in Africa, I don't think the United States will come all the way in order to liberate Kuwait, an African state. It's only because of oil that we had the Gulf War. As a matter of fact, oil was the reason why Iraq invaded Kuwait. And it was the reason why we had the Americans to the area with all the other allied forces.
Persianlahden sodan hyökkäysvaihe ei vienyt edes 100 tuntia. Saddam Hussein hävisi, mutta voi vielä jatkaa sapelin kalistelua.
After the guns fell silent, what's the meaning